Today, we'll talk about language and the dictionary. We are still sunk in the 17th and 18th centuries. We're hoping to make an escape in a week or two. Or a week or two, yeah. And then it's just, boom, Twitter, right? Nothing happens to Twitter. What I want to talk about today, in particular, is the shaping of the modern language and the institutions that arise with it, and their connection to the public sphere and all the other things that are going on. Is really all part of the story. If you remember, I don't have that quote from Tim Lanning on this one. I put it on every other, but it's just another one of those things like the museum and science and the newspaper and so on, all of which happened in this period when nothing much technological is going on. So English, let's do the history of English, and since we're, I'd subtitle this course "Moving Right Along." Right? If you think about the English language, the Middle English period, that's the period after the Norman Conquest, 1066, and up to the early Renaissance, the 15th century. It's really a situation that we would think of as diglossia or triglossy. It turns out I'll explain in a second. In our society, it's a massively multilingual society. I mean, it's probably a massively multilingual classroom. If I went around, I'd probably find a dozen languages that people speak. Nonetheless, we're talking in English. And when we're in English, when we're in the dominant language, which is English, everything we do in English. You go to the dorm and you sit around drinking beer and you're talking English. And you go to class and you're speaking English. And you write a paper and you write it in English. And you submit an article to a scientific journal, you submit it in English. And the president gives his, everything's in English, in the same language. That seems the normal state of affairs. And in many, many countries today it is. In most of the Western nations it is. There's one language that is used for virtually all purposes. It's not the situation in a lot of communities in this world. In a lot of communities, there will be two languages used, not simply in the sense of being bilingual or multilingual. Some people speak, as in Switzerland, some people speak German, some people speak French, some people speak Italian. But rather, that everybody uses two, or most people use two languages. One for their everyday lives, the things that you have dinner, the language you have dinner in and talk to your friends, maybe do business in. And the other, sometimes the language of administration, the state, sometimes the language of religion. That's the situation, for instance, in most of the Arab world today. In Egypt, people go around their ordinary lives, they speak Egyptian Arabic. When they do serious scholarship, it's in something, it's not really classical Arabic, but it's a form of Arabic, it's based on classical Arabic. In much of China, people will, or many parts of China, people will use the local, they say dialect, calling these dialects is sort of, linguists say a dialect is, the only difference between language and a dialect is a language is a dialect with an army, right? So, in parts of China, people will speak Fukienese or Cantonese in their daily lives and use Mandarin as the language of scholarship and publication and so forth, although there is publication in those varieties as well. So this is a very common situation. It's common in India, it's common in many parts of the world. And it was a situation after the Norman Conquest. You had the ordinary people speaking English, or sort of late Anglo-Saxon, you could think of it as, and the nobility who had come over and defeated Harold at the Battle of in 1066, the Battle of Hastings, spoke French. So that there were two languages used, one the higher language and one the lower language, H and L people sometimes describe. That's a situation called diglossia, from the Greek for two languages. You can have triglossia, I don't think I've ever heard the word tetraglossia, but you can have that too. Where one language is used for higher purposes and the other for lower purposes. Now really it's a kind of triglossia, because ordinary people use English, the nobility use French, and the courts are using French. Scholarship, theology, religion, obviously very important at this period, are conducted in Latin, as it is across Europe. So there are three languages used. And while most ordinary people will speak only English and maybe a smattering of French, an educated person will know all three languages. Nobody reads Ivanhoe anymore, do they? No, when I was a kid, everybody read Ivanhoe in 8th grade. It's a good thing we don't anymore. There's a story that went well. Over the course of time, by the 14th century, everybody now speaks English, even the nobility speaks English. They use French, they use English. And when they use English, they drop in lots of French words because they're all bilingual. In the same way, in any bilingual community, you adopt a lot of words from one language into the other. So if you look at the beginning of the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, I've just put in red all the words that are from French. There are actually fewer in the Canterbury Tales than there would have been in other kinds of literature this period. But Point de April from French with his sweet showers in English. The Droit de Marche has perdu all the Paul could use. The drought of March has pierced from French to the root and bathed every vein in such liquor and such, not really liquor in that sense, of whose virtue, of whose nature, the flowers engendered. All those words in red are French words. And by this time, English is really a Creole being a language that's formed from two other languages. So this is the language the English language that emerges at the beginning of the Renaissance. Latin is still used at this period for serious scholarship and religion and so on. But these languages, I'm going to call them vernacular languages meaning the languages that people use in their everyday lives. These languages are beginning to emerge out of the shadow of Latin as the languages, not simply for commerce and ordinary conversation, but for scholarship, for literature, for philosophy, for theology. In the course of, several things are going on at this time. Standard dialects are emerging. In the Middle Ages, we speak of French and Italian and English, but it wasn't as if you could identify a place where they spoke French. As late as the 18th century, Rousseau was a great walker, and he would walk from Paris to Rome on occasion. And he would say that every day it would become a little less French and a little more Italian, so finally he would speak Italian. But there was no boundary between French and Italian, there were just lots of dialects that, each of which like its neighbors, but less like the ones further down the line. So standard languages are only starting to emerge in this period, in the early Renaissance. London English becomes the standard form of English. Parisian French, the Langue and the Languedoc, the French was divided into two dialects, depending on what word you used for yes. So in northern France it was œil, which becomes oui, and in southern France it was from the Latin ille, and from southern France it was hawk from Latin hawk. And they're still a part of French you probably know called the Languedoc, and that means the language of hawk, the place where they say hawk instead of oui. These are beginning to emerge in connection with a kind of proto-nationalism as the notion of the nation. It's nothing like the nation state that's going to emerge later. But even by Shakespeare's time, there's a clear sense of the nation, of patriotism, of this blessed plot, this realmless England from Henry V, Part 1. Henry V. Or is it second? Yes, it's Christmas Day. John of Gaunt speech. St. Christmas Day speech. Oh, who was with me? Do it in your theatrical way. Who was with me? Right. Printing and literacy are exercising a great deal of influence in this period. Blake talked about this last time. The rise of printing creates material, but it also creates a market for written material, which and more people are becoming literate. The cities are growing. As the cities grow and commerce grows, literacy increases there. People who were working on the land didn't have to be literate. Now are often in service. They're working for as servants and have to know have to be literate to some degree. Even women are becoming literate. The Reformation has taken place, obviously in Northern Europe. The Reformation stressing direct acquaintance with the Gospels. It's important not simply to hear about the Bible from the priest, but actually to be able to read it and read the text. And that's an enormous driving force for literacy. Again, Blake was talking about this. So all of these things are going on in this period. The standard languages are emerging. And as this large numbers of people now are emerging who, for example, know English, but don't really know Latin or don't know Latin that well, there's a move to use English more and more for these other purposes that Latin has been used for, and not just English, but French and so on and so forth. Paul talked about Boyle in his Discussions of Science. In 1661, this is late already, he publishes his new experiments in English, not in Latin, which 100 years earlier would have been unthinkable. He would publish them in Latin, so every scholar in Europe could read them. He finally arranges for a Latin translation, only because they're being ripped off. Other people have been translating the book in Latin and selling it. He wants it. This is, of course, the time when we talk about IP. You see this becomes important. This is in the German-speaking world. The number of Latin titles between the middle of the 17th century and the beginning of the 19th century goes from 4%, 67% to 4%. So Latin virtually disappears by the end of the 18th century as a means of educated discourse. With this, as people are using the vernacular more and more for literate communication, for writing and philosophy and so on, literature, people become concerned that the vernacular really isn't up to it. I mean, it's a language, it's fine for doing commerce or for buying pigs with and so on and so forth, but it's not a language in which you can do serious writing. And there's a series of complaints throughout this period about the inadequacies of English, and in France about the inadequacies of French and so on and so forth. I'll just read this, the second of these. Shall English be so poor and rudely based as not be able, through mere penury, for not penury, not having enough words, to tell what French has said with gallant grace? Look, the French have a much richer language than we do because they have more words, the words coming from Latin, and most tongues else have less fecundity. So we need, English has to be made into a language that can be used for these purposes. So what happens is that people begin to coin new English words on the basis of Latin roots. Sometimes they're Greek roots that have been almost never directly from Greek, but they come from Greek into Latin and then are borrowed into English. They're called inkhorn words. The inkhorn is the horn that's used before the inkwell. And they're words that come literally out of the inkwell in the sense that nobody ever used them. They're just made up by scholars. And a great many of the words that we use in ordinary speech were inkhorn words that emerged in the 16th and 17th centuries in particular. Absurdity, dismiss, celebrate, encyclopedia, habitual, and genius. Those are all words that were invented. They didn't come from French. They were borrowed. They were coined from Latin in the 16th and 17th century. There were also a lot of words that nobody ever used. Eximius for excellent, obstinate for bear witness, adnicolate, I don't know how you say adnicolate, for reduced to nothing. And there's naturally enough, as people are coining all these fancy words, a reaction against it. People say, as Thomas Wilson does, a rhetorician, 16th century rhetorician, this first should be learned. We never affect any strange inkhorn terms, but to speak as commonly received, neither seeking to be over-fine yet over-careless. There's a sense that the use of inkhorn words, that the use of these fancy words, is pedantic. This is an illustration from a play called Pedantius, written in Latin, produced at Cambridge, satirizing, I forget the name of the character, but he was a scholar of the time. In Love's Labour Lost, how do you say Holofernes is another character of this type. And people make fun of the scholars and pedants who use this kind of language. Robert Caudry, whom we mentioned last time, I'll come again to in a moment, at the beginning of his Table Alphabetical, the first English dictionary, says, some men seek so far for outlandish English they forget altogether their mother's language, so that if some of their mothers were alive, they were not able to tell or understand what they say, and yet these fine English clerks will say they speak in their mother tongue. This has always been, kids go off, there's a popular song from the late 19th, early 20th century, putting on the agony, putting on the style. Has anybody ever? That's what all the young folks are doing all the while. As I look around, I'm very happy to smile. I'll spare you the singing. Young man back from college makes a big display with a big jawbreaker that he can hardly say, can't be found in Webster's, and it won't be for a while, but everybody knows he's only putting on the style. You, of course, are all above that practice, but it has been known to happen. My daughter uses very big words that she just likes to say. Sometimes she knows what they mean, sometimes she doesn't. I don't tip my hand. By this time, English has absorbed a number of these original inkhorn words to become part of ordinary English. Here's the first, I guess the first sentence of the Declaration of Independence. I've put in red the French word. Black are the Anglo-Saxon words. Red are the French words, the words that came in with the Norman Conquest. And the blue words are these words that were coined on Latin basis in the 16th, 17th, 15th, 16th, 17th century. So events, political, connected, assume, separate, impel. All of them, they were not words that Chaucer would have known. They were words that came in afterwards, that were around Shakespeare's time. And at this point, you really got something like the modern English language. For which you need a dictionary, for reasons we'll talk about. The first word books, the first dictionaries, are, and MacArthur discusses this, they're usually bilingual. They're either Latin-English, or sometimes they'll be English-Cornish. They'll be between two vernaculars, French-English, and so on. But the first monolingual English dictionary appears 1604, Robert Caudry's Table Alphabetical of hard, usual words for the benefit and help of ladies, gentlemen, and other unskillful persons. What's the idea? Well, there are all these new words, like events and political and connected and assumed and separate, which have been coined from Latin bases. These people, clerks who don't know Latin, women who haven't studied Latin, don't understand these words, so they need a dictionary to help them understand these words. Now, these are the hard, usual English words. The hard words meaning they're not things like cat and sea and the and so on and so forth. Those words everybody knows, so they don't need a dictionary. And they're not these very obscure words, pedantic words that the inkhorn terms that people complain about. But they're words in the middle. There used to be, I don't think they exist anymore, secretaries back before they were admins, used to have on their desk a small dictionary of words like that, of words that were hard to spell, separate, and so on and so forth. There is a rat and separate, that's how my teacher always told me that. But not the and cat and so on and so forth. I mean, there would be just the difficult words to spell. Now, of course, it's all online, and it doesn't matter. So Caudry produces his Table Alphabetical, his alphabetical list of English words. We mentioned it last time in connection with the initiation of alphabetical order. I went through this last time, so I won't go through it again in this recursive procedure that he explains, because alphabetical order has to be explained to because it's obvious. The same thing's happening in France. Where there's this desire for what they call illustration or illustration, not meaning pictures, but rather meaning making illustrious. We want the French language to be an illustrious language, which is worthy of literature and philosophy and so on. institutes of something like higher education, the Collège de France, which is still there in the 5th arrondissement in Paris, is the first university in which French can be used. The medieval universities we were talking about last 2 weeks ago, I guess, it's always Latin. Now the vernacular is being used in university instruction. French by the 16th century is beginning to be used in the law courts. It was Latin before that. More and more titles are being published in French. It goes from just 10% in French at the beginning of the 16th century to more than half in French by the end of the century, an enormous shift. The problem being, as we'll see in English as well, that people then say, well, French is fine, but we don't have the right words. It's all unruled. It doesn't have structure and order. It's changing too fast. What's going to keep it fixed? Gilles Saury, a French grammarian, I think it's 1529, writes, would to God that some noble heart could employ himself in setting out rules for our French language so that it doesn't change and become incomprehensible in a few years. And in fact, shortly after that, a while after that, the French Academy, Académie Française, is established by Cardinal Richelieu. 40 members at the time to compose of the intellectuals, the writers, the men of letters, and some aristocrats, some nobles, who will write a dictionary and determine the form of the French language and fix it so that it won't be this hodgepodge called the Immortels, the Immortals. They're still there. They've still got there in the Institut de France. Next to that library of Cardinal Mazarin that we looked at, the same buildings. They wear their green jackets and their swords and so on. So a friend of mine's father was elected to the French Academy. So he had to spend a fortune for that jacket. It's kind of the French laugh at it now, but they still take it seriously in some way. Not in the sense that they publish dictionaries every so often. Not in the sense that they actually listen to what the Academy says about the language. The French word for car is voiture, which is a feminine word, la voiture. And the word automobile, because it also means a car, is always treated by everybody as feminine. Une auto, not an auto, une auto. The French Academy has decided that since automobile is from a Latin neuter word, and since neuter words become masculine in French, automobile must be masculine. Well, that's just silly. If you say an auto, you sound like an American. I mean, nobody talks like that. But the Academy nonetheless has its rules. Nobody pays attention. Nonetheless, it does suggest the role of the state, not simply in the language, but in culture. In the continental polities like France and Italy, the state takes a much more active role as the conservator of the national culture, which it doesn't in any of the nations of the English-speaking world. And that, in a certain sense, is symbolically represented in the fact that the French have an academy, and so do the Swedes, and so do the Spanish, and so do the Romanians, and the Portuguese, and the Russians. We don't. We don't have this symbolic institution charged with guarding the language. I was in Paris many years ago. They were trying to reform the French orthography and do it. They were going to do it with a circumflex little hat, on certain letters. And Michel Rocard, who was then the French premier, went on television. He said, well, on the advice of the Académie Française and the Haute Commission de la Langue Française, the High Commission of the French Language, we are making these changes, and so on. And I was thinking, Dan Quayle was at that time the vice president. I was thinking that's what it was. I said, well, you have to imagine Dan Quayle going on American television and saying, well, on the advice of the High Committee on the American Language, it will now be I before E, even after C. I mean, that's how absurd I think it would be. But there it's perfectly normal. The reading revolution, I'll go through this rather rapidly because Blake went over it last time, but there is this revolution. It's hard, as Blake said, to document exactly what's going on, who's reading what, but there's lots of testimony to the effect that more and more people are reading. I'll just read this one. In the late 18th century, I can't help observing the sale of books in general has increased prodigiously. The poorer sort of farmers who before that period spent their winter evenings in relating stories of witches, ghosts, hobgoblins now shorten the winter nights by hearing their sons and daughters read tales, romances, etc. So lots more books are being sold. Certainly lots more people can read and are reading. How many and in what way, as Blake said, is for serious historians to spend 6 years trying to figure out. I'm not going to talk about it here. By the late 18th century, Samuel Johnson can say Britain has become a nation of readers. Now, that doesn't mean simply that it's a nation where everybody's reading, although that's true, or everybody seems to be reading, though that's true, but that it's a nation of readers in the sense that the act of reading, and more generally the act of participating in this written discourse via books and periodicals and the newspaper, has become, in a certain sense, constitutive of national identity. That's how identity is formed in some way. That's how your sense of belonging to the national community is created via the media, in the same way that, for us, how do we, Benedict Anderson, I mentioned this earlier, a British political scientist, talks about nations as imagined communities. I mean, we're sitting here in Berkeley, California, with a certain sense of ourselves as Americans, and we feel connected via that sense with people in Atlanta, Georgia, and Bangor, Maine, and Chicago, who also feel themselves to be Americans, whom we have never met, will never meet. How do we know that our experiences are similar? Well, we're all watching American Idol, or we're all reading the newspapers, or we're all visiting the same websites. But there's a sense of a common experience that comes of experiencing the media. And that's what it means to say, in Johnson's time, that it's a nation of readers. And moreover, it's in that discourse, over the media, and the newspapers, and so on, in the public sphere, that the questions of national importance are being discussed. That's where we have a sense of common interest. Do we insist that the religious bodies pay for insurance for contraception? Or not? That's this debate that's going on all over the country. It's being mediated through the internet and on television and the newspapers and so on and so forth. And we're all, in some sense, at least passively participating in it, in a sense of national community. We have a sense of what the nation should do. Okay, the problem, once you get this public sphere, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, how are we going to coordinate this conversation, this national conversation, which is taking place in this impersonal print medium? It's not face-to-face anymore. We're reading books and newspapers and thinking about what we read there. Books and newspapers that are written by people we don't know, whom we've never met, whose context we're unaware of, who are using words that may or may not mean the same thing to them that they mean to us. How can I even know what somebody else means if he writes an article in the newspaper if I don't know who he is, where he's from, and so on? Moreover, how can we ask a discourse based in the media, based in print, to be the stable source of social values and replace the authority of traditional institutions, the university, the church, parliament, the aristocracy, all of these institutions that previously were the source of social values? How can we ask this conversation to replace that if that conversation is changing every 20 years? I mean, look, we read Chaucer now. Nobody understands Chaucer. This is then, when I say now, I mean the 18th century. They look back on Chaucer.